Hello everybody, my name is Dylan DePonte and tonight I'm going to talk to you briefly about ways in which you can write German essays more effectively and also in a way that you're using the knowledge that you have and building on that knowledge base. The first thing I want to talk about is circumlocution, which is a method you'll learn a lot more about in German 2000 and 3000 level courses. It is the process in which you replace a word you're not familiar with or you don't know how to say with a word or a phrase that you do know how to say. An example of this would be, let's go with the word cruel, because it's almost Halloween. Cruel can be directly translated into German. I don't know the German word for cruel, but I can find it very quickly using an online translator. The only problem with this is if I were to simply copy and paste this word into my paper, I'm not using my own knowledge, but I'm instead relying on an outside source. And the more often I do this, the less exercise, if you will, my brain is getting in the German that I do know. So instead, it's much better to always work with your own knowledge base and simply try to say as much as you can in ways that you know already how to say. So cruel, for example, I could easily say the person, if I wanted to say a person was cruel, I could instead say the person made me unhappy, or made me sad, or was scary. There's obviously many different ways to say it. And obviously with circumlocution, you are losing a little bit, especially with more complex words like cruel, which is, it's got a lot of connotations to it. You're obviously losing a little bit of meaning. And this you'll just have to deal with. And really, in your German essays, it's not a huge deal. And as you learn, maybe look up the word cruel, and there, now you can see what it is. And if you can remember it for next time, then you can use that. But I always suggest writing as much of your essay as you can in your own words and with your own ways of saying things. And if there's a word that just cannot be translated or cannot be circumlocuted, um, then alright, you can look that up, but I don't suggest doing it unless you really need to. The second thing I want to talk about is the tendency for some people to write in English and then try to translate it directly into German. And I don't mean by using Google Translate, because hopefully none of you are doing that, but I mean, for example, if I started my essay with "My name is Dylan," this is a very normal thing to say, and you hear it every day. But if I went word for word from English into German, I'd get something like "Mein Name ist Dylan." And suddenly you have a phrase that is grammatically correct in German, but not normally used by native speakers. Instead, in German, you would say "Ich heiße Dylan." And I'll show you an example. I'm going to replace this double S with the S-set. I tend to do this with all of the umlauts and the S-set. I simply copy it and paste it from my online dictionary. You can use alt key codes. For example, alt 0228 will give you an A with an umlaut. I don't generally remember those codes, however, so I tend to do the copy and paste method. So in German, "Ich heiße Dylan" is a very normal thing to say, and it sounds native. But if you translated that into English, you would get something like "I am called Dylan." And so now you have something that's colloquial in English translating into something that doesn't sound colloquial in German, and something that's colloquial in German translating into something that isn't colloquial in English. And so this is just a very basic example of a problem you'll run into a lot if you're writing especially more complex things in English and trying to bump them into German. Another example is saying "es gibt" in German. That's obviously the same as, or perhaps not obviously, so here you go, a little bit of German knowledge. That's the same as saying "there are," or "there is." And that doesn't translate normally, because "es gibt" is like saying "it gives" in English directly, and that obviously doesn't get the same meaning of "there are" and "there is," which is what "es gibt" should be. So this is another example of sort of a speed bump you'll run into quite a bit going from English to German. So what I suggest doing is, when you're writing these essays, try to think in German and try to become comfortable enough with the language that it's not a matter of, okay, this is how I'd say that in English, how would I say that in German, but instead just jumping directly to, this is how I would say that in German. And that's a skill that takes a lot of practice, and by practice I mean doing your homework and writing your essays and reading your German books if you have them. Requires a lot of practice and also a lot of time, because an entire language has a huge vocabulary, and you're never going to learn every word. But what you want to do is slowly expand the words that you do know, both by using circumlocution and every once in a while a dictionary. But you want to mostly become very comfortable with words you do know. Because if you have a very small vocabulary but you know how to use it all and are very comfortable using it all, that's obviously a lot more effective than knowing a ton of words but having no grasp on how to actually apply them and form them into complete sentences. So those are 2 tips I have for you. They're very effective if you can have a little bit of discipline in actually doing them, and hopefully using these 2 methods you can write better German essays and hopefully learn more while writing these essays.